The Dirty Dozen of Davos. Autocrats, blowhards and bores, the 12 bad boys of the World Economic Forum shindig in the Swiss Alps. It's that time of year again. Leaders, business titans, philanthropists and celebs descend on the Swiss ski town of Davos to discuss the fate of the world and do deals/shots with the global elite at the annual meeting of the World Economic Forum. This year's theme, rebuilding trust. Prescient, given the dumpster fire the world seems to be turning into lately, both literally, climate change, and figuratively, where to even begin. As always, the Davos great and good will be rubbing shoulders with some of the world's absolute top-drawer dirtbags. While there's been a distinct dearth of Russian oligarchs in attendance at the WEF since Moscow launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine in February 2022, and Donald Trump will be tied up with the Iowa caucus, there are still plenty of would-be autocrats, dictators, thugs, extortionists, misery merchants, spoilers and political pariahs on the Davos guest list. Note, this list was written based on a preliminary list of RSVPs shared with Politico. Several guests who were rumored to be coming didn't end up in Davos after all. 1. Argentine President Javier Milei. Known as the Donald Trump of Argentina, and also as the madman and the wig, the chainsaw-wielding Javier Milei has it all. A fanatical supporter base, background as a TV shock jock, libertarian anarcho-capitalist policies, except when it comes to abortion, and a memorable hairdo. A long-time Davos devotee, he's been attending the WEF for years. Milei's libertarian policies have turned from kooky thought bubbles to concerning reality after he was elected president of South America's second-largest economy. Riding a wave of discontent with the political establishment. Sound familiar? The question now is how far Milei will go in delivering on his campaign promises to hack back public service and state spending, close the Argentine central bank and drop the peso. If you do get stuck talking to Milei in the Congress Center or on the slopes, here are some conversation starters. Milei's likes. 1. American mobster Al Capone, a hero. 2. His cloned English Mastiff dogs, his advisors. 3. Spreading the gospel on tantric sex. 4. Selling human organs on the open market. Milei's dislikes. 1. Pope Francis, a filthy leftist and communist turd. Though the Milei administration has recently invited him back to Argentina to visit. 2. Taxes, insisting, incorrectly, Jesus didn't pay him. 3. Sex education, a Marxist plot to destroy the family. 4. Fighting climate change, a hoax, naturally. 2. Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. Rumor had it that Mohammed bin Salman would make his first in-person WEF appearance at this year's event, accompanied by a giant posse of top Saudi officials. Ultimately, the Saudi ruler didn't show up. It would have been the ultimate redemption arc for the repressive authoritarian ruler of a country with an appalling human rights record, who, according to United States intelligence, personally ordered the brutal assassination of Washington Post journalist Jamal Khashoggi inside the Saudi consulate in Istanbul in 2018. Rumor has it that Mohammed bin Salman will make his first in-person WEF appearance at this year's event. Leon Neal/Getty Images. Perhaps MBS would still be a WEF pariah, consigned to rubbing shoulders with mere B-listers at his own Davos in the desert, if it were not for that other one-time Davos darling turned persona non grata, Russian President Vladimir Putin. By launching his invasion of Ukraine, which killed thousands of civilians and hundreds of thousands of troops, Putin managed to push the West back into MBS embrace. Guess it's all just oil under the bridge now. Here's a piece of free advice: try to avoid being caught getting a signature MBS fist bump. Unless, of course, you're the next person on our list. 3. Jared Kushner, founder of Affinity Partners. Jared Kushner is the closest anyone on the mountain is likely to come to Trump, the former, and possibly future, billionaire baron cum anti-elitist president of the United States of America. On the one hand, a chat with the Donald son-in-law in the days just after the Iowa caucus would probably be quite a get for the Davos devotee. On the other hand, it's Jared Kushner. The 43-year-old, who is married to Ivanka Trump and served as a senior advisor to the former president during his time in office, leveraged his stint in the White House to build up a lucrative consulting career, focused mainly on the Middle East. Kushner's private equity firm, Affinity Partners, is largely funded through Gulf countries. That includes a $2 billion investment from the Saudi Public Investment Fund, led by bin Salman, which was, coincidentally, pushed through despite objections by the Crown Prince's own advisors. Kushner struck up a friendship and alliance with MBS during his father-in-law's term in office, raising major conflict of interest suspicions for the Trump administration, especially when the then U.S. president refused to condemn the Saudi leader in Jamal Khashoggi's murder, despite the CIA concluding he was directly involved. 4. Ilham Aliyev, Azerbaijan's president. What does an autocrat do with a breakaway state within his country's borders? Take advantage of Russia's attention being elsewhere along with the EU's thirst for his gas to launch a lightning-fast offensive, seize control, deport those pesky ancestral residents, lock up any rascally reporters, and then call a snap election to capitalize on the freshly whipped patriotic fervor, of course. Not that elections matter much for Ilham Aliyev. A little ballot stuffing here, a bit of double voting there, add a sprinkle of violence and suppression, and hey presto, you've got a winning recipe, for 2 decades and counting. Running Azerbaijan is something of a family business for the Aliyevs. Ilham assumed power after the death of his father, Haydar Aliyev, an ex-Soviet KGB officer who ruled the country for decades. And the junior Aliyev changed Azerbaijan's constitution to pave the path to power for the next generation of his family, and appointed his own wife as vice president to boot. While Aliyev had initially ripped for the WEF, he didn't end up making it up the mountain. Too much action back home, it seems. 5. Chinese Premier Li Qiang. Li Qiang is Chinese President Xi Jinping's ultra-loyal right-hand man, and will represent his boss and his country at the World Economic Forum this year. Li's claim to infamy, imposing a brutal lockdown on the entirety of Shanghai for weeks during the coronavirus pandemic, which trapped its 25 million-plus inhabitants at home while many struggled to get food, tend to their animals or seek medical help, and tanking the city's economy in the process. Li is also the guy selling, and whitewashing, China's Uyghur policy in the Islamic world. In case you need a refresher, China has detained Uyghurs, who are mostly Muslim, in internment camps in the northwest region of Xinjiang, where there have been allegations of torture, slavery, forced sterilization, sexual abuse and brainwashing. China's actions have been branded genocide by the U.S. State Department, and as potential crimes against humanity by the United Nations. Li Qiang will represent his boss and his country at the World Economic Forum this year, Johannes Simon/Getty Images. The Chinese government claims the camps carry out re-education to combat terrorism, a story Li has brought forward during recent meetings with Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas, Malaysian Prime Minister Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim and Pakistan's caretaker Prime Minister Anwarul Haque. Guess we know whom Li will be lunching with. 6. Rwandan President Paul Kagame. Nicknamed the Napoleon of Africa in a nod to his campaign to seize power in 1994, Paul Kagame has ruled over the land of 1,000 hills since. He's often praised for overseeing what is probably the greatest development success story of modern Africa. He's also a dictator. The former military officer changed the Rwandan constitution to scrap an inconvenient term limit and cement his firm grip on the levers of power, while clamping down on dissent. But despite being accused of overseeing the imprisonment, exile and torture of Rwandan dissidents and journalists, Kagame has managed to stay in the West's good books, and on the Davos guest list. 7. Slovakian Prime Minister Robert Fico. Slovakia just can't seem to quit Robert Fico. Forced from office in 2018 by mass protests following the murder of investigative journalist Jan Kuciak and his fiancée Martina Kusnayeva, Fico rose from the political ashes to become Slovakian Prime Minister for the 4th time late last year. His SMA party ran a Putin-friendly campaign, pledging to end all military support for Ukraine. Slovakian courts are still working through multiple organized crime cases stemming from the last time SMA was in power, involving oligarchs alleged to have profited from state contracts, former top police brass and senior military intelligence officers, and parliamentarians from all three parties in Fico's new coalition government. 8. President of Hungary Katalin Novak. Katalin Novak, elected Hungarian president in 2022, must have pulled the short straw. She's been sent to Davos to fly the flag for the EU's pariah state. Luckily, the 46-year-old is used to being the odd one out at a shindig. She's both the first woman and the youngest ever Hungarian president. You'd think Novak, given her background, would be a trailblazing feminist seeking to inspire women to reach for the stars. But the arch-social conservative is a hero of the international anti-abortion, anti-equality, anti-feminism movement. It's her thoughts on the gender pay gap, though, that ought to get attention at the famously male-dominated World Economic Forum. In an infamous video posted back in late 2020, Novak told the sisterhood, "Do not believe that women have to constantly compete with men. Do not believe that every waking moment of our lives must be spent with comparing ourselves to men, and that we should work in at least the same position, for at least the same pay they do." That's us told. 9. Cambodian Prime Minister Hun Manet. You may be surprised to see Hun Manet on this list. The new, Western-educated Cambodian Prime Minister has been touted in some circles as a potential modernizer and reformer. But Hun Manet is less a breath of fresh air and a lot more continuation of the same stale story. Having inherited his position from his father, the longtime autocrat Hun Sen, Hun Manet has shown no signs of wanting to reform or modernize Cambodia. While some say it's too early to tell where he'll land, given his dad's still on the scene, along with his communist loyalists, the fact is, many hallmarks of autocracy are still present in Cambodia. Repression of the opposition? Check. Dodgy elections? Check. Widespread graft and clientelism? Check and check. 10. Qatar Prime Minister Mohammed bin Abdulrahman bin Jassim Al Thani. How has a small kingdom of 2.6 million inhabitants in the Persian Gulf managed to play a starring role in so many explosive scandals? There were the influence-buying allegations that claimed the scalps of multiple European Union lawmakers. The claims of undisclosed lobbying by two Trump-aligned Republican operatives. The multiple controversies over attempts at sports washing. Not to mention the questions raised about what officials in the Emirate knew ahead of the October 7th attacks on Israel by Hamas, of which Qatar is the biggest financial backer. Mohammed bin Abdulrahman bin Jassim Al Thani is the Prime Minister of Qatar, a country that's played a starring role in many explosive scandals. Chris J. Ratcliffe/AFP via Getty Images. You'd think that sort of record would see Mohammed bin Abdulrahman bin Jassim Al Thani shunned by the world's top brass. Nah. Just this month, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken met with the Qatari leader and told him the U.S. was deeply grateful for your ongoing leadership in this effort, for the tireless work which you undertook and that continues, to try to free the remaining hostages. See you on the slopes, Mohammed. 11. Polish President Andrzej Duda. When you compare Polish President Andrzej Duda to some of the others on this list, he doesn't seem to measure up. He's not a dictator running a violent petro-state, hasn't invaded any neighbors or even wielded a chainsaw on stage. But Duda is yesterday's man. As the last one standing from Poland's Nationalist Law and Justice Party that was swept out of office last year, Duda's holding on for dear life to his own relevance, doing his best to act as a spoiler against the Donald Tusk-led government by wielding his veto powers and harboring convicted lawmakers. All of which is to say, when you catch up with President Duda at Davos, don't assume he's speaking for Poland. 12. Amin Nasser, CEO of Aramco. The Saudi Arabian state oil and gas company is Aramco, the world's biggest energy firm, and Amin Nasser is its boss. If you read Aramco's press releases, you'd be forgiven for assuming it is also the world's biggest champion of the green energy transition. Spoiler alert, it's far from it. Exhibit A, Aramco is reportedly a top corporate polluter, with environment non-governmental organization Client Earth reporting that it accounts for more than 4% of the globe's greenhouse gas emissions since 1965. Exhibit B, Bloomberg reported in 2021 that it understated its carbon footprint by as much as 50%. NASA, meanwhile, has criticized the idea that climate action should mean countries either shut down or slow down big time their fossil fuel production. Say that to Al Gore's face. This article was updated to reflect the fact Shuzi Chu, Ilham Aliyev and Mohammed bin Salman did not ultimately attend the World Economic Forum. Dionysos Stories, Peter Snowden, Suzanne Lynch and Paul de Villepin contributed reporting.